Listen, I know this video is coming out about 2 months late, which is why I changed the title so that way it could maybe get more clicks. But you have to understand, right? There was the Euros and also Copa America happening around the same time. And then after that, I got back home and just had to go through the whole club football grind for a little bit, okay? So I finally found time and actually made this video. Let's just get on with it, shall we? CONCACAF now enters the second round of its qualifiers. It's a pretty simple format, 5 teams in each group and 2 advance to the final round. One half of this round was played in June and the next will not happen until June 2025. But with every review, as there are new teams being added to the mix, let's go ahead and introduce a good majority of the CONCACAF nations. We start with Group A, which has Honduras, Antigua and Barbuda, Cuba, Bermuda, and Cayman Islands. Honduras made it to the World Cup 3 times. Their last appearance was in 2014, where they were grouped. In fact, they've never actually made it past the groups, but did come close back in 1982. In general, the 80s were a good period for Honduras as they won the Gold Cup back in 1981. They also shocked everyone by finishing 3rd in the 2001 Copa America. Nowadays, though, they've been awful. Their recent qualification campaign saw them go winless throughout the entire 3rd round, but they should be able to get out of this group at least. Antigua and Barbuda has never made it to the World Cup, and the closest they came was a CONCACAF qualifier 3rd round appearance in 2014. Their nickname is the Bena Boys, which refers to a specific genre of music based in Antigua and Barbuda. And this shit slaps. Cuba has been to 1 World Cup back in 1938, where they actually reached the quarterfinals after beating Romania on penalties. Unfortunately, it's been downhill ever since. Today, no one even really recognizes the feat of 1938. Nowadays, they just gamble on which players will defect to the US during the Gold Cup. And there's been a lot of players who have defected over the years, including Cuba's all-time top scorer, Lester More, who defected back in 2007. Do not reverse that name. Bermuda has never made it to a World Cup, and they've only ever reached the 2nd round of qualifiers. However, a pretty cool fact is that their first international game was away in Iceland in 1964. The nation's top scorer is Sean Goater. He scored 84 times for Man City back in the late 90s to early 2000s, and now he works at the club as a youth coach. Also, there's a club called Vasco da Gama Bermuda who have won the Bermuda Premier League 3 times. And they have no relation to the Brazilian club. The Cayman Islands, who I think ripped part of their federation's logo from FIFA's. The nation has never made it to the 2nd round of qualifiers ever. Until now, at least. And there's really not much to talk about this national team, but I did find their domestic league quite humorous. It consists of teams like Academy, Elite, Future, Sunset, and Latinos. Over to Group B, we have Costa Rica, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada, and the Bahamas. Costa Rica has 6 appearances in the World Cup and featured in the most recent edition. Their best finish was 8th when they overcame a group of death and narrowly missed out on the semis due to a penalty shootout versus the Netherlands. 1 decade later, the generation behind that feat is history, and Costa Rica are moving toward the future with a younger core and well-respected manager. And so far, things have looked promising, with the nation recently drawing Brazil in the 2024 Copa America. If it isn't my favorite country in this region, Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad made 1 appearance in 2006 where they failed to make it out of the group. They did, however, draw with Sweden in their opening match, and also made history at the time as the smallest country to qualify for the World Cup. Also, we love creative football shirts here, and Trinidad a couple years ago released these absolute beauties. I need it! St. Kitts and Nevis, the team with my favorite nickname, the Sugar Boys. With a Z. They have never qualified for the World Cup, and the farthest they've gone in qualifiers is the 3rd round. However, just last year, St. Kitts and Nevis did recently qualify for their first ever Gold Cup. The country also has a club called Garden Hotspurs, which sounds like something from a Cal the Dragon TikTok. And one more thing. I did not watch St. Kitts and Nevis play a friendly on March 20th at 8:45 p.m. Grenada has not even come close to qualifying for the World Cup, but they have made 3 appearances in the Gold Cup, however. Grenada's national team, however, is most known for an infamous moment during the 1994 Caribbean Cup. In a game between Grenada and Barbados, Grenada had just scored to half the deficit versus Barbados. Barbados needed to win by 2 goals to advance to the final, and knowing that a golden goal was worth 2 points for whatever reason, they deliberately scored an own goal to force extra time. However, to avoid the golden goal situation, in the last last few minutes, Grenada was trying to score in both goals with Barbados defending both goals. But unfortunately for Grenada, the game did go to extra time and Barbados did end up getting their golden goal. Oh, also, there's a club in Grenada called Queen's Park Rangers. The Bahamas, more known for its commonplace for tourism than their national team. They have never qualified for the World Cup, but they are called the Baja Boys, with a Z, which I think is pretty cool. They also go by the nickname the Bahamian Slayers, which I also think is pretty cool. Now, we've already talked about how tourism is probably more popular than the national team. So is the beach football national team. The Bahamas even hosted the 2017 FIFA Beach World Cup. And even funnier, Leslie St. Fleur is both top scorer for the national team and the beach team. Over in Group C, we have Haiti, Curacao, St. Lucia, Barbados, and Aruba. Haiti has one World Cup appearance under their belt. 1970 saw the Haitians miss out after losing a third playoff game on a neutral ground. However, they redeemed themselves qualifying for the 1974 World Cup. Unfortunately though, Haiti was put in a group with Argentina, Italy, and Poland. Believe it or not, however, Haiti were once one of the strongest teams in the region back in the 70s. They even won the Gold Cup in 1973. However, the Haitians haven't seen the final round of World Cup qualifiers since 1982. But maybe this qualification campaign will change that. Since becoming an independent country in 2010, Curacao has never qualified for the World Cup. But despite how young the country is, it's considered one of the better of the rest. They even made it all the way to the quarters of the 2019 Gold Cup. Their most capped player is fullback Cuco Martina, who I personally know as the guy who scored this unbelievable goal versus Arsenal. Curacao also plays some of the oddest friendlies you'll ever see. Just last March, they beat Hull City 1-0 and then drew with Alanyaspor. And then back in 2022, they played Ajax. St. Lucia has never qualified and have never made it farther than the second round of qualifiers. Their head coach is Stern John, who is not only Trinidad's all-time top scorer, but also CONCACAF's. Also, there's a club in St. Lucia called Platinum FC, and their logo looks, a bit familiar. Aruba has never qualified for the World Cup. However, they are home of River Plate Aruba, and you can get one of their jackets for just 50 USD on eBay. There's also SV Dakota. They've won the Aruban League 17 times. They caught my eye in particular because their logo features the Georgia Tech yellow jacket. Barbados has never qualified for the World Cup, but one time they shocked the entire world in 2002 qualifiers by beating Costa Rica 2-1. Their most notable player is Greg Goodridge. Goodridge was a fan favorite at Torquay United and also helped Bristol City promote to the second division in 1998. He continued playing football back home until he retired in 2017 at the age of 47. Group D, we have Panama, Nicaragua, Guyana, Montserrat, and Belize. Panama have one appearance back in 2018 where they finished dead last. Still though, it was an incredible moment just qualifying for the tournament, as it was Roman Torres' last-minute winner versus Costa Rica, which had the whole country celebrating into the night. Los Canaleros missed out on 2022, but going forward, things look promising, because just recently they beat the US in the 2024 Copa America to advance to the knockouts. Panama also finished runners-up in the most recent Gold Cup. Nicaragua has never qualified for the World Cup, and never has been to the final round, but things could change with their relatively favorable group. Their all-time top scorer is Juan Barrera with 25. He's been active since 2009. And back in 2022, Nicaragua released this work of art as their third shirt. Guyana has never qualified for the World Cup and has also never made it to the final round of qualifiers. But back in World Cup 2014 qualification, they did manage to advance to the third round after winning a group that had Trinidad in it. Guyana is also home to some very interesting clubs. There's Anne's Grove FC, whose club motto is success through hard work and determination. Shit looks like something I'd see in IB. You also got Santos FC, Georgetown. And I mean, look at how hard this badge goes, cause god damn. Oh, also, the Jonestown incident happened in this country. Montserrat, since becoming a FIFA member in 1998, they have never qualified for the World Cup, not even come close. And the team is most known for its appearance in a match called the Other Final, where on the same day as the 2002 World Cup final, the two lowest ranked teams in Bhutan and Montserrat played a friendly. Montserrat lost 4-0. Belize has never qualified for the World Cup, but their best qualification campaign was back in 2014 when Dion McCauley single-handedly carried Belize. He scored in 7 of the nation's 8 qualifiers and saw them narrowly miss out on the third round. However, at the end of World Cup qualifiers, 3 players ended up tied for top scorer: Luis Suarez, Robin van Persie, and Dion McCauley. Next up we have Group E with Jamaica, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, Dominica, and British Virgin Islands. Jamaica has been to one World Cup back in 1998 where they won one group and donned these absolute beauties. Since then, Jamaica has qualified for the final round of qualifiers 3 times and has fallen short every time. The team actually has quite a few notable Premier League players: Mikel Antonio, Bobby De Cordova-Reid, and Ethan Pinnock. And with them all being over 30, this is probably their last chance to make it to a World Cup. Guatemala has never qualified for the World Cup, but got very close to making it to the Intercontinental Playoffs back in 2006. On the final day, Guatemala needed to beat Costa Rica and see Trinidad lose to Mexico. I mean, Trinidad losing to Mexico, that seems pretty easy. And Guatemala got the hard part out of the way by winning 3-1. But unfortunately, somehow, someway, Trinidad triumphed against Mexico. And ever since, Guatemala has not even come close to the final round. Oh, also, they have a club called Deportivo Malacateco, and its badge looks like if you asked someone on Fiverr to make a new Chicago Bulls logo for Latin Night. The Dominican Republic has never qualified for the World Cup and has never made it to the final round, and it makes sense because this country more so prefers baseball. Mariano Diaz, who used to play for Real Madrid, actually played a single game for the Dominican Republic back in 2013, but then retired from the national team in hopes of representing Spain. How'd that go, buddy? Dominica has never qualified for the World Cup. You're going to be hearing this a lot. Their all-time top scorer is Julian Wade, a guy who made his senior debut for Montserrat but then had to switch back because he was actually ineligible to represent them. Also, remember Queen's Park Rangers in Grenada? Well, let me introduce you to Dominica's Exodus FC. What is it with the Caribbean and QPR? If it isn't the winners of the Virgin Derby from a few months ago. The British Virgin Islands have never qualified for the World Cup. There's not much about this team, but did you know Andrea Villaboas had his first job here as a technical director? Also, the British Virgin Islands is home of evil Real Madrid. And finally, there's Group F, which houses El Salvador, Suriname, Puerto Rico, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Anguilla. El Salvador has 2 appearances at the World Cup back in 1970 and 1986. Both times, they failed to win. But they did manage to score their first ever goal in the World Cup in '82, in a 10-1 loss to Hungary. Since then, though, all they've been able to do is reach the final round 4 times, with their most recent appearance being back in 2022. Also, for some reason, at the beginning of next year, they're supposed to play Thailand in a friendly in Charlotte. Puerto Rico, aka Bad Bunny Land, has never qualified for a World Cup. A good portion of their squad is currently filled with college kids, so I guess the future should be decently bright. The nation's all-time top scorer is Hector Ramos with 18 goals between 2010 and 2019. He made his senior debut at Club Sevilla FC Puerto Rico, and yes, they are actually affiliated with the Spanish club. Over the decades, there have been numerous Dutch-born players of Surinamese descent who ended up playing for the Netherlands. Some include Ruud Gullit, Frank Rijkaard, Edgar Davids, Clarence Seedorf, Patrick Kluivert, and Virgil van Dijk. However, in 2019, Suriname made it so any of the diaspora in the Netherlands could actually represent Suriname. And that's benefited them a lot, and the results have slowly been improving. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they have never qualified for the World Cup, but they did actually have one appearance in the Gold Cup back in 1996. Their most capped player is Cornelius Stewart with 69 caps, and he's been active since 2007. The forward has played his club football in countries like Canada, Finland, Maldives, India, Bangladesh, and right now he's playing in Indonesia. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is also home of Becky FC, whose logo is absolute peak graphic design. Anguilla was the other team that advanced this round from the first. It is also the first time they have ever advanced past the first round of World Cup qualifiers. The domestic league is called the AFA Senior Malay League, and the title winners in 2015-16 was a club called Salsa Ballers. I love this game. Over in Group A, Honduras have started off just as you'd expect with 6 points in dominating performances versus Cuba and Bermuda. Just below them is Cuba, who only have 3 points because the Cayman Islands had visa issues because of the US's overly dumb and complicated government policy on traveling to Cuba. The Cayman Islands did, however, beat Antigua and Barbuda thanks to a last-minute goal. And that wasn't the only time Antigua and Barbuda was tortured by a last-minute goal, because against Bermuda, they fumbled a 1-0 lead in the 90th minute. Costa Rica is off to a flying start with 6 of 6 points, 7 goals scored, and none conceded. Second is currently held by Trinidad, who struggled versus Grenada and had to come back from 2-0 down. Meanwhile, St. Kitts and Nevis also grabbed 3 points off the Bahamas and are just behind in third. Group C is pretty much already decided at this point, with Curacao and Haiti both at the top with 6 points. These two will play each other next summer to determine who probably wins the group most likely. Group D is pretty similar, with both Nicaragua and Panama earning 6 of 6 points. Still hanging in there though is Guyana, who beat Belize 3-1. Same situation in Group B as well. Guatemala absolutely destroyed everyone in their path so far, scoring 9 goals and conceding none. Jamaica are tied with them, but their performances haven't necessarily been that convincing. Finally, in Group F, Suriname are top after dismantling both St. Vincent and Anguilla. Puerto Rico is 2 points behind them after putting 8 past Anguilla and escaping with a huge draw in El Salvador. For El Salvador, the pain never ends because that extended a 22-game winless run. Thankfully though, they finally broke the code and beat St. Vincent and the Grenadines to stay in the fight. On to Asian qualifiers, where the last qualifiers of round 2 happened. In Group A, Qatar had already clinched a spot in the next round, so all the focus was on the battle for the remaining qualification spot between India, Kuwait, and Afghanistan. The second to last match day didn't see any change as both games played out goalless draws. However, on the last match day, India stunned the Qataris by going up 1-0, and if that result stood, the Indians would 100% be going into the next round. However, the Qataris equalized in the 72nd minute. But on second view, you can clearly see that the ball was all the way out before it was dragged back in and put into the net. No review, no nothing, the goal stood, and in the end it completely f***ed over India as they eventually lost 2-1. Meanwhile, Kuwait scored a late winner versus Afghanistan to confirm a ticket to the third round. And just to make things worse for Indian football, their national hero Sunil Khetri retired after the window. He caps off one of the greatest international careers anyone could have with 94 goals in 151 caps. India, now you have no choice. You actually have to produce some kind of quality here. Just a little. Just a smidge. Otherwise you're fucked.
What you doing there, Bill? Satellite dish trouble?
No, I'm just up here to kill myself.
Group B saw Japan confirm their spot in the last window, while Syria were close to sealing their own. However, North Korea had something to say about that as they beat Syria with a goal in the 2nd minute of stoppage time. Syria got bottled up and trashed by Japan, and in the following match, once more, the North Koreans took advantage of their misery by demolishing Myanmar and stealing the 2nd qualification spot on the last day. South Korea pretty much needed just 1 more point to move on to the next round, and they made it look almost too easy by single-handedly increasing the homicide rate in Singapore by 3%. Over in the battle for second between China and Thailand, the two nations played out a 1-1 draw, which was far more favorable for the Thais because their last match was versus Singapore, while China had to play South Korea in Seoul. However, the Chinese did well to fend off the Koreans and only lost 1-0. So now, Chinese hopes relied in the hands of China 2 Electric Boogaloo. Because if Thailand beat Singapore by a margin of 3 or more, it was simply Guangzhou. The Thais went full guns blazing early on, but just could not score past Singaporean keeper Hassan Sunny. But finally, Thailand drew first blood in the 36th minute. 2 more goals, and they're through. Into the second half, the Thais had a really good chance to make it 2, but again, Hassan Sunny makes an unbelievable stop. Then minutes later, Singapore spoiled the party, stun on the counter, and now Thailand need to score 3 more again. The War Elephants were able to grab 2 more goals later on, but that would be all as they were eliminated by the strong hands of Hassan Sunny. That means China moves on to the next round, and to express their appreciation to their new overlord, Chinese netizens found out that Hassan Sunny actually had a food stall and started giving it 5-star reviews galore. There were even fans who came to the stall to celebrate, and some even transferred crazy amounts of money in the name of gratitude. And this was all followed up by a thank you message from Hassan Sunny, which garnered over 100 million views on Weibo. Group D wasn't as eventful, but it was pretty close in the table with Kyrgyzstan and Oman tied with 9 points, and Malaysia just behind them in third. Malaysia needed to beat Kyrgyzstan to actually have any hope of qualifying, but unfortunately they could only get a point. Oman beat Taiwan 3-0, so this pretty much sealed Malaysia's doom. But it only got worse for Malaysia, because 2 days after their last game, Asian Cup hero Faisal Halim was victim to an acid attack. For a while, his career was in question, but thankfully he just recently returned to action at club level. But the misfortunes don't end there, because their promising head coach Kim Pan-gon resigned in mid-July. Anyways, back to qualifiers, Oman and Kyrgyzstan played out a 1-1 draw to cap off Group D. So in the end, thanks to Malaysia actually, Oman win the group with Kyrgyzstan advancing with them. Group E was pretty much locked down last window. Iran and Uzbekistan did play each other in June, but it ended in a 0-0 draw, so everything stays the same. Iraq became one of 3 other nations to earn all 18 of 18 points in their group after wins versus Indonesia and then Vietnam. And Indonesia was able to qualify for the next round after a 2-0 win versus the Philippines. It's the nation nation's first ever appearance in the third round. Group G saw Saudi Arabia at the top with Asian Cup winners Jordan 3 points behind them. But not for long, as Jordan once again defied all odds and beat Tajikistan and Saudi Arabia to sneak into first due to goal difference. Group H was pretty much decided with the UAE and Bahrain clear favorites to go through after 4 games played. The UAE took a chunk out of Mount Everest and then drew with Bahrain to win the group. And Bahrain's 2 draws this window was enough to see them in the next round for the first time in 14 years. Finally in Group I, Australia was absolutely dominating before the window and nothing changed after as they beat Bangladesh and then manhandled Palestine. So this sees the Aussies in the next round after an almost effortless campaign. Meanwhile, Palestine's draw with Lebanon in the second to last match day was enough to see them advance to the third round for the first time ever. A beautiful story amidst the darkness unfolding in Gaza. On to the last region that played qualifiers in June, Africa. Starting the June window, Egypt were top of their group with 2 wins, while both Burkina Faso and Guinea-Bissau were tied for second with 4 points. The Egyptians had a pretty solid window, earning 4 points to stay at the top. Burkina Faso, on the other hand, fumbled second place away after choking a 2-0 lead away versus Sierra Leone at home. This proved Guinea-Bissau's hard-fought draw versus Egypt to be crucial as they hop into the playoff spot now. Senegal and Sudan were tied for first in Group B, with the Senegalese just ahead due to goal difference. That changed, however, when Senegal dropped yet another point after conceding a late goal against DR Congo. Meanwhile, Sudan bagged themselves 2 wins, including one in the Sudan Derby, which now sees them hop into first 2 points above the Senegalese. Don't count out DR Congo though, because they are just hanging in there in third after beating Togo. Group C was seeing some of the most shocking scenes as before June, Rwanda and South Africa sat 1-2 while Nigeria were struggling. And the struggles for Nigeria continued. They drew with South Africa at home and then lost to goddamn Benin. It makes sense though, because their coach who led them to the AFCON final left in March, and also the team so precisely resembles this meme. Speaking of Benin, they had a sensational window in June. They also beat Rwanda and went from last place to third, where they're now tied on points with everyone else. Rwanda though did manage to bounce back, beating Lesotho, which still sees them in first. And just behind them by a single goal in the table is South Africa, who collected a solid 4 points in June. Group D saw 3 teams tied for first, and it only got more chaotic because besides Eswatini, every team managed to steal at least a point from one of their opponents. Cameroon destroyed Cape Verde beat Libya 1-0, Libya beat Mauritius 2-1, Mauritius beat Eswatini 2-1, and Eswatini also lost to Angola, and Angola drew with Cameroon. So at the end of all of this, Cameroon just edges Libya to hold on to the top spot. And Cape Verde is tied on points with Libya in third, and Angola is also still in the hunt with 6 points in fourth. It was a bit of a mess before Group B started because Eritrea withdrew before the campaign. So that saw Tanzania, Niger, Zambia, and Morocco all tied on 3 points, but the Moroccans still had a game in hand. And as you'd expect, they took care of things swiftly in June with 2 wins, including a 6-0 drubbing of Congo. Prior to that game, however, Congo was to host Niger in the DR Congo because their stadium didn't meet regulations. However, Congo refused, and Niger was awarded the easiest points they'll ever receive. Zambia and Tanzania also played this window, and it was an early goal that sealed the deal for African Wisconsin. So now looking at the table, Morocco has 9 of 9 points and sits in first, while Niger and Tanzania still remain tied on points, and Zambia are holding on by the skin of their teeth in fourth after an awful window. Over to Group F, where Ivory Coast and Gabon were tied for first. The two played against each other in June, and the AFCON champs prevailed 1-0. The Ivorians then finished off the window with the draw versus Kenya, while Gabon managed to bounce back in a 3-2 win versus Gambia. Burundi actually earned the same amount of points as Ivory Coast to stay in the mix. So now looking at the table, Ivory Coast is sitting at the top, Gabon is just 1 point behind them, and Burundi is third, 2 points below the playoff spots. Group G before the window was pretty damn close, with Algeria in first with 6 points and second to fifth all tied on 3. Algeria did not start June well though, as they lost to Guinea 2-1, but they did well to bounce back against Uganda. Guinea had the chance to jump into the top 2 thanks to their win versus Algeria, but then they conceded a last-minute winner from Mozambique. Mozambique also beat Somalia to complete a fantastic window for them. So now looking at the table, Algeria and Mozambique, of all teams, are tied on points, while Botswana, Guinea, and Uganda still can't be separated as they all earn 3 points each this window. Group H saw Tunisia and Equatorial Guinea tied on 6 points. Well, that was until Equatorial Guinea saw both of their wins versus Liberia and Namibia taken away because they had fielded an ineligible player. Either way, the former top 2 played each other in June, and Tunisia won 1-0 through a single penalty. Equatorial Guinea then managed to win in their following game versus Malawi. As for Tunisia, they still can't escape the Namibians. Namibia also collected a draw with Liberia, and Liberia collected 3 points from a 1-0 win for Sao Tome and Principe. Sao Tome and Principe also lost to Malawi in this window. So now looking at the table, Tunisia hold first with 10 points. Namibia, thanks to their gifted 3 points and another 2 points this window, now sit nicely in second with 8 points. And right behind the top two is Liberia and Malawi. Finally in Group I, it was the Comoros on top continuing their dream run. Mali was 2 points behind them in second, third was Madagascar, and while too early to call, Ghana was in danger of not qualifying. However, the Ghanaians turned their campaign around. They came back from 1-0 down to beat Mali in the 4th minute of stoppage time. Then the Black Stars beat the Central African Republic in a 7-goal thriller to cap off the window with all 6 points. On the other hand, first place Comoros lost to Madagascar to start the window, but bounced back and defeated Chad 2-0. Speaking of Madagascar, after their win, they then drew with Mali. And so after all of this, the Comoros still hold on to the lead, but Ghana are now tied on points with them. Madagascar's 4-point window sees them not too far from what seemed to be the impossible. And then there's Mali, who would have been favorites to win this group, but find themselves in 4th due to underwhelming performance after underwhelming performance. And so that was your very, very late World Cup qualifiers June review. Don't worry, I don't think September is going to be this bad, especially since we don't have to introduce any more countries until probably like next year. But again, I ask you, how is your team doing in qualifiers? Let me know. But of course, a massive shout out to all our members, including Janos Barash, Brazilian Fury, Respect the Jeff, Othman JN, Habakkuk, Anazir Makalankong, Alex Rod, Ulta, Miguel Munoz, Return Fire, Rory Burns, Slider Kit, Snifrix, Takuoka Fan, The Cypriot 35, Not Windows 95 Man, Kentra Agatra, Big Boars the Baby Eater II, Kerbo, Unkwell, St. Terrence, Sylvia Citrus, Ryan Jans, Wise Orange, Rashford Enthusiast, Cocosaurus Rex, LeJames Braun, Samu, Just MRC, Cheesebait, Cooper Rory, The Somali Pirate, Claymore Roomba, Winder Gel, M4 Does Stuff, Finn Likes Rugby More, Davox, The Portugizer, TPSK25, Polar Protos, Van Fan, Lucian Von Croix, Ethan Bennett Loves Kavicha, Gazegos Bresakiewicz, Mano Tengo Fei, Adrian, A Ghostly Owl, Chris Visconti, Dominic Griffin, Kyler Kres, Mohammed Altanib, Nish, Patrick Barley, Rashford God 5, Raspberry L, subscribe to Tenditim, and Unbroken Persona. The light just died, by the way. If you'd like to become a member, there's a link down in the description and up in the annotations. You can follow my Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like. You can also follow my Twitch, where I could be streaming a little bit more than I usually do. But yeah, until then, I'll see you guys.